So thank you so much, Dinesh, once again for this opportunity to deliver the second talk in the series of our archaeological exploration. And today we will be looking at the Buddhist symbols, and mostly from the archaeological point of view, and connecting it with the historical sort of developments. So I will straight away switch on to my presentation. Share. And this is the one, right?
Yeah, it is visible. Yeah.
So as we continue to explore the Buddhist symbols, what I thought that I will pick up from where I left last time, and I ended up my last lecture with showing you this sign of the Buddha on the Sanchi North Gate, where you can see that at the bottom there is a Buddha Pada, and at the top there is the representation of the Triratna, and in between there is the body of the Buddha shown figuratively with the flowers and other symbols. So the second photo is about when the gate was exactly found. You can see that there is a vast difference between that. So from where does this symbol appear? So if you look at this archaeological scripture, the photograph number 3, you can see that people are paying their homage to the empty seat. And you can see it very clearly that there is an empty seat, and then there is a pillar, and on the top of the pillar there is a Triratna, and the seat is empty, which represents the Buddha. The Buddha is there, but he is not represented with his human form. He is represented by various symbolism like the Buddha Pada, the feet of the Buddha, and the Triratna. So I just wanted to connect some of the dots which I left unconnected last talk is about what is the stupa in terms of our practice. So, the history of stupa is like this, that after the death of Venerable Sariputra, Ananda was missing him so much because they were very close friends. And Ananda felt very sad over the death of Mahaparinirvana of Venerable Sariputra. And he told Buddha, Buddha told Ananda that Sariputra's physical body is not there, but Sariputra did not take away his skandha of Shila, Samadhi, Prajna, and 2 ways in which the freedom is achieved. The freedom due to the freedom of the mind, and the freedom due to the penetration into the insight of everything, that is Prajna Vimukti. And Buddha goes on further defining the Dhammakaya in terms of the 37 Bodhipakshiya Dhamma, which is like in Mahaparinibbana Sutta, which is considered to be the last important sutta that the Buddha delivered. The Buddha has given the the list of 37 Bodhipakshiya Dhamma. And you go any Buddhist tradition, whether it's Theravada tradition or Mahayana tradition or Vajrayana tradition or any tradition there is, it has this 37 Bodhipakshiya Dhamma, the list of various teachings of the Buddha. So the Buddha, as if telling Ananda that though the Upadan Khanda of Sariputra has left, his Dhamma Skanda is still there in terms of the Dhammakaya, which constitute about the 37 wings of enlightenment. And he said, Buddha further said, to behold the enlightened being is to behold their Dhamma body, the total path to the enlightenment. And in one of the suttas to Vakkali, the Buddha taught that he who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha. So you see, if we understand the stupa in this way, in terms of the Dhamma body, in terms of the way it represents the complete path to the enlightenment, if we can see it, we can see the Buddha. That's what the Buddha taught to Vakkali. There are various types of stupa. I'm spending a few moments on stupa because stupa is such a central figure that around which all the arts and the symbols of Buddhism were developed. And it's true about all the schools of Buddhism. So now basically there are like 3 major types of stupas. Sarik stupa, which constitute, which sort of hosts the body remains of the Buddha. And there is a Paribhogya sutta, the things that were used by the Buddha, like bowl and his all different items that the Buddha used. And then there is a Uddesika stupa, which talks about or which represents the nature of the Buddha. And then votive stupas. You go any Buddhist sites and you will find very many small stupas there. So they were like offerings and they were sometimes small, sometimes big, and they were called the votive stupas. So stupa, has a very profound history in terms of stupa has its own property. So stupa could hold the land and offerings. So whatever you donate it to the stupa. And the property of the stupa was the property of the Buddha, because in the ancient time, the Buddha was considered to be the living Buddha. So, whatever you donate, the land where the stupa is erected, which was considered to be the land belonging to the Buddha. And the stupa was the model of an enlightened personality. So, just these few figures, which I wanted to just recap about the stupa. Now, when we are talking about symbols, there are many ways by which the symbols are defined. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to resort to a definition which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has given us. And according to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, symbols represent the soul of a thing. So, this is a very profound sort of an understanding of what is called the symbols. And we have seen other definitions of symbol in the previous classes. In the previous lecture, but here I'm going to resort to the definition which Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar has handed over to us, which is about symbols represent the soul of a thing. So nothing makes sense if it doesn't make a symbolic sense to us, isn't it? And therefore, if you dig down beneath this definition that Babasaheb Ambedkar has given to us, we can begin to see that the symbol is actually whatever we experience, everything is symbolic. And it is, as it were, represent the very heart or the soul of a thing. And a symbol is not something which is not indefinable. We can have many definitions of symbols, and we have seen the process of semiosis by which the meanings are made out of the symbols. So what I thought, for the course of our discussion today, I picked up these 2 points from what Babasaheb Ambedkar was has mentioned in his unfinished book, where he was going to write about the symbols. So he has indeed wrote a bit about symbols of Hinduism, and he was going to write about symbols of Buddhism, symbols of Jainism, symbols of Christianity, symbols of Islam. But that is lost. That portion of his thinking is lost. But we have his portion of thinking on symbols of Hinduism, where he categorically talks about the caste being the symbol of Hinduism, cult in terms of the Rama cult, Krishna cult, Shiva cult, and Vishnu cult. And third is the service of Superman. And he has gone into a very in-depth discussion on what these symbols entail. And I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to, bring this point up so that we can begin to understand the symbols of various religions. So I do not have any evidence of what kind of a material he used in terms of symbols of Buddhism, but I reckon that he would definitely talk about Triratna being the symbol of Buddhism, because the Triratna is the heart of the Buddha's teachings in a sense of it represents the essence of the Buddha's teachings. So he would have definitely talked about Triratna in terms of Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. As a symbol of Buddhism, he would have talked about the Noble Eightfold Path. And we have seen that Babasaheb Ambedkar has referred to Noble Eightfold Path very often. Whenever he wrote about Buddhism, whenever he gave the talk on Buddhism, he has referred to the Noble Eightfold Path. He would have definitely talked about Paramitas. He would have definitely talked about Nibbana, because we know that he had a very unique take on Nibbana as a Noble Eightfold Path and as the ultimate happiness when the 3 poisons are removed. And we can see that discussion there in Babasaheb's writings and speeches. He would have definitely talked about Paticca Samutpad. He would have talked about the Pachyata, Shunyata, Anatma, Nairatmya, and very important manuscripts, the Pothis, that are like the very the symbols of Buddhism itself. And I'm going to go into that in this talk. And of course the Bodhisattvas. This is just speculative in terms of what can be the possible range of the symbols of Buddhism, which represents the very heart of Buddhism. So we do not have that manuscript or whatever Babasaheb Ambedkar has envisioned, but we can reckon, or we can guess that he would have definitely included some of the points here mentioned as the symbols of Buddhism. Now, whenever we are looking at the Buddhism in the ancient times, particularly the archaeology of ancient India, it needs exhumation. We need to dig down into the history. We need to dig down into the scriptures. We need to dig down into the material history. We need to dig down into the symbols so that we can know the history of India as it is. And but unfortunately, as we know, that the history of ancient India is mythologized, isn't it? It's said that India doesn't have history, but it's not true, because India surely have a history, isn't it? But it's lost in what is called the myths and the mythologies, and because of that, it's very difficult to know the true history of our country. And as the point is made very empathetically, this has been deliberately done by the Brahminical writers. Isn't the majority of them we were writing, they were the Brahminical writers, and they have written the Indian history in terms of their class interest. And it's a very important point, because Brahmins represent a particular class. So whatever they do, they want to secure the interest of a particular class. And though they might be educated class, it's very difficult to have that free intellect that the Buddhist monks had, because they had no axe to grind, they had no attachment where they had nothing to safeguard, except the quest for the truth that they were all committed to. So to give an example of how the history is mythologized, the example is given of the word deva. And we can see in the different scriptures that the word deva means janavishesh, the special people, the special categories of the people. It has nothing to do with the so-called celestial being, means human families made to appear superhuman agencies. And as this is a very important point that Baba Ambedkar has made. Thus, the pith of history is squished out. And similarly, same is the case with Yaksha, Gana, Gandharva, Kinnars. They were all the human families, and same with the Asuras and Rakshasas. Now, one of the most striking things that we often come across is the figure or image of the Naga. Who were Naga? So it is said that a Naga is represented as a serpent or snake, but archaeological exploration and the exhumation of the past has proved that they were human communities. And the most authenticate source says the history of the ancient India, and to a greater extent the medieval India, are the sources which are pertaining to Buddhism. The Buddhist sources, they have preserved a lot of historical evidences in terms of the history. You get to know the geography of the ancient India, looking at the Buddhist texts, how much distance between the Rajagraha and Kapilavastu, in terms of the flora and fauna, in terms of the medicinal systems, in terms of the cultures, in terms of the traditions, in terms of the communities. We can find that in the Buddhist sources. And as we can see that the Buddhist literature helps a great deal in the archaeology. So some of the photos that I have put up about the Nagas, you can see that the Nagas are not the serpents. They have this, hoods, but they are, representing that they belong to the Naga clan, but they are not the serpents. I'm going to show you some of the photographs to prove the point that the Nagas were the human communities. And this is very important, because whenever we look at the Indian history, the history of the struggle between the two cultures, the Aryans and the Nagas, this point is made very clear by the Buddhist remains. You see, as you can see that, in the first photograph, the Naga is worshipping the relics, the stupa. In the second, there is a representation of the Naga. These are all from the Buddhist archaeological sites. Whatever I have taken here is all from the Buddhist archaeological site. And I'm going to show you some amazing photographs. For example, this photograph where the Bodhi tree is worshipped. There are the Nagas with different ranks. Like you can see that there is the first Naga having 4 hoods, then 3 hoods, then 2 hoods. So they are like, the different ranks among the Naga communities. And you can see here the Naga turban, and you can see here Naga. And, this is from Pauni, which I have already showed you in the past slides. This figure is very important. This is in South India. So you see, the Buddha is like a Mahanaga. Buddha was called a Mahanaga, the great Naga. and two of the Nagas are paying their homage to the Buddha, isn't it? So you see, this archaeological evidence makes it clear to us that the Nagas were not serpents or snakes; they were the human communities, and it's very clear from looking at this sculpture that is found in the Buddhist texts. You see, also there are the female Nagas. If you look at the two pillars, there are two Nagin, we will call them female Nagas, who are having the hoods, isn't it? This is the second one where the serpent is, there is this very famous symbol in the South Indian Buddhism, and this last one is taken from the caves of Ajanta. It's placed at the prominent place in Ajanta, showing that the Ajanta was patronized by the Nagas. Now, who were the Nagas is not a mystery, because if you study the political history of India, the Nagas were the first people who formed the bigger political systems in this country. And the Shishunag and other Nagas, all the way up to the Naga kingdoms that Baba Ambedkar has so clearly mentioned in terms of the Naga kingdoms. And it's all there to see. It's the history of India, that the big political systems were formed by the Nagas. Now, I just wanted to give you an idea about how the archaeological surveys are done. So these are the two of seals from the Mohenjo-daro. And as I told you in the last lecture, that the top strata of the Mohenjo-daro had the Kushana stupa, which you can see in the figure. And as the new evidences are coming, the Indus Valley civilization is the journey of a civilization from the Indus Valley to the what is called the Dravidian civilization. And there's a very fascinating book which has come up recently, The Journey of Civilization by Bal Krishnan, who has written a very beautiful book explaining how the people of the Indus Valley civilization has migrated to the South India, leaving behind various evidences in terms of the names of the places, in terms of the various sports like Jallikattu and the cockfight, the bullfight and the cockfight, and the cosmopolitan atmosphere that is depicted in the Tamil literature, which is like talking about the very free society that now has been archaeologists are talking about in terms of the Indus Valley civilization, like a horizontal civilization where there was no centralized ruler, and well advanced civilization, and one of the biggest civilization, more bigger than Mesopotamia and other ancient civilizations. So you see, this is whenever we see this sill, it is said that it's Pashupati. There is no mention of that in any of the scriptures about on anywhere that this is Pashupati. But there is definitely a man sitting in the meditation posture and surrounded by animals. They are wild beasts, and there is something written which is not deciphered. But definitely you can see the evidence of what is called the Shramana tradition, because the Shramanas or Munis were considered, if there are any references about Muni, they are negative in terms of they are practicing something strange, some kind of strange practices. And this point is very well brought by a very famous historian known as Lalmani Joshi, when he talked about the emergence of yoga in our country or in the Indian subcontinent. I put this linguistic map here deliberately to show that the Brahmi has some linkages with Indus script. We don't have any concrete proof out of that, but if we can unravel, and some of the scientists are trying to unravel as to the script, because the language is dead, and unless you find some living language which coincides with the script, it's very difficult to decipher. So they are trying to now play with the Dravidian languages. Let's see where do they go. But this is what is the state of the things. And I just wanted to give you this photograph. It's a very interesting photograph. It's in Madhya Pradesh. I went there a couple of months back, and what I'm pointing to in this photograph is a very old, Ashokan scripture, Ashokan inscription, where he's saying that he has come there with his unwedded wife. And there are stupas, but they are like the stone stupas. But what is interesting about this place is that there are natural caves. Okay? And these natural caves are very old. And these natural caves are so old that you can find, if you look at the second photograph, the evidences of the paintings done by the prehistoric people. So I have also been to Bhimbetka, and around that area, there are many prehistoric caves where you can still find the prehistoric paintings. Thousands of years before the Buddhists took over these caves. So you see, in this cave, in this location called Sarumaru, associated with maybe Sariputra or Moglayan, Mahamoglayan, or Sangamitra or Mahindra, we don't know. But this is linked with them. This place is linked with them because Ashoka came here when he was very young, and here he has written that he has come here with his in the modern times girlfriend. And you see, the third photograph is just beneath that inscription where I'm standing, and it's more polished Brahmi. And here Ashoka has given some kind of instruction as to how the harmonious society can come into being. So I am showing you this because the Buddhists have taken over the very old caves, prehistoric caves, and evidences of that we can find out. You see, the paintings that were done on the walls, all in the prehistoric times, the Buddhists have taken over those caves. So I have no evidence to prove how that continuity is mentioned, but you can see here some kind of a link, because this sort of the writing is the first sort of the evidences of the writing in the Indian subcontinent. Of course, there was a writing in the Indus Valley civilization, but that civilization is silent. It is not speaking to us at all because we are not able to read that script. So you see the proliferation of the elaborate symbols in Buddhism from the earth mounds. And as the history goes, there were 10 stupas which were constructed after the Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha. And when Ashoka came to power, he collected all the relics of the Buddha except one, because the Nagas of the Ramagrama, they didn't allow Ashoka to take the relics. So except one stupa, Ashoka, digged out the Buddha's relics from all the places. As the legend goes, that he circulated them throughout the India and built 84,000 Buddhist stupas to commemorate the Buddha, or to keep the memory of the Buddha alive. And as the history goes, the earliest stone monuments in India date from the Mauryan period. Before that, we do not find the stone monuments. And this point is very interesting because before that, before Ashoka, we don't find any material evidence of so-called material history. And the stone monuments are particularly related to Ashoka, and after that, there was a huge proliferation of the Buddhist sites. So you see, the last point that I'm trying to make here in this particular slide is that the Ashokan sites became the nucleus of the development of the Buddhist archaeological sites in the most of the cases. So if you go to the Amravati, so Amravati had the primitive Ashokan stupa, over which the great stupa was built, and such is the case with Bharuch, Sanchi, and all other places. In Sanchi time, we see the stupa of Sanchi. It was constructed during the time of the Guptas. It was such elaborate sort of a site. But before that, there was a normal mound, stone mound, which was built by Ashoka. So you see, there the Buddha is represented in two ways: an iconic and iconic representation. And the Buddha was not represented in the human form. So no Gautama Buddha or any other Buddha was represented in the human form before. The Buddha could not be expressed in human form because the Buddha was considered to have gone beyond that. He could not be represented in the human form. According to the Lokuttarvada school, the Buddha, even as a bodhisattva, was transcendental. So he cannot be represented in human form because he was not human. He was just manifesting in terms of the human form, but he had already gone beyond. So that's why we see that the Buddhists expressed their devotion to the empty throne, as I have shown in the previous slide about how the Buddhists paid their homage to the symbols representing the Buddha, and the Buddha is conspicuous of his absent there. So you see, this slide, that first photographs in this slide is about it's very old and it's carved on the stone, just the sketch of the stupa. And the second is the elaborated constructed one, and that stupa existed. Now, one of the prominent sites, the symbol of Buddhism is Triratna. And we We have seen Triratna sign in our Buddhist intellectuals collective of India. You see, this is a very beautiful sign and very abstract one. Now, this sign of Triratna is because it's very difficult to understand, and I have been trying to do the semiotic analysis of it. The three things, of course, represent the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and the horizontal bar is as if some people call it Vajra, some people say that it's lotus, but the bottom round is very interesting. People say that it's the center because there is nothing. It's the realization of anatta, and because the ultimate Buddha realizes that there is no self to be cherished, because the self is just an idea, a linguistic construct, a kind of a conceptual construct. It doesn't exist as it were in terms of in the ultimate analysis. So you see, this is a very interesting symbol here. And the second figure is from Vadnagar in Gujarat, and it represents the earliest forms of a bodhisattva. So you see, if you have seen the Buddhist iconography, if you have seen any representation of the bodhisattvas, you'll see that on the head there is a Buddha. But here in this figure, you will see that on the head there is a Triratna. And I think this is very interesting symbol to represent a Buddhist or even the bodhisattva, a being who is intent on becoming Buddha. And you can see it very beautifully done here in this scripture. The bottom one is the slab which I took the photograph in Panigiri, and you can see here the swastika symbol and the Triratna symbol. You see there is this very beautiful photograph here on the elephant. Two people are sitting and they have a pole, and on the top of that there is a Triratna symbol with of course the parasol. Isn't it? So it's like the king is protecting the Triratna. So very indicative photography. We can see, how it represents the Triratna being, it's like a flag, that's being hosted. And the last photograph is of course taken from the Sanchi, where the Triratna is very prominently depicted. So this symbol is very important, and you can see it on the coins issued by the Buddhist kings. You can see it on various seals. You can see it in all the ancient Buddhist archaeological sites. This symbol is prominently present everywhere. Now, Bodhi tree. If you see the first photograph here, the Bodhi tree represented the Buddha, and here the Buddha himself is shown with the Bodhi tree. And in the second photograph, you can see the sculpture where the people are paying homage to the Bodhi tree, and the practice of worshipping or paying homage to the Bodhi tree goes back to the Buddha. When Buddha was in the Mulgandakuti in Sarnath and people missed him, so Buddha indicated that if they miss him, they can pay their homage to the Bodhi tree, which is like sort of the symbol for the Buddha's enlightenment. And you can see here clearly that the people are garlanding the Bodhi tree. And if you go even to Sri Lanka today, you can see that the facial type of arrangement is made, like the square around the Bodhi tree is made, and people offer water to that in order to protect the Bodhi tree, in order to make the Bodhi tree nourish and flourish. And we this practice of offering water to the Bodhi tree even continues to date. The turban of the Buddha. This is a very interesting sort of a symbol for the Buddha. So when the Buddha left his home, he left his life of luxury, and he left his life of being a very privileged person in that kind of a society where he was born. And what the Buddha did, he took off his turban and gave it up. Now we know that if you look at the contemporary India and in some societies, you see that the different classes of people or caste of people have different turbans. And I have been to Baroda Museum, and there are like hundreds of turbans displayed showing what community or what kind of a turbans. So turban was a sign of privilege or a prestige or a rank in the society. And when Siddhartha left his home, he gave up his status, he gave up his social class, he gave us his social rank. And it is very significant. It was so significant that the Buddha's turban was worshipped. It was a symbol of Buddha, Buddha's renunciation, and it is depicted everywhere. You see here, the people are paying homage to the turban of the Buddha. In the second photograph, you can see that the people are paying homage to the turban of the Buddha. You see, the turban itself became the sign or the symbol of the Buddha when he was not represented in terms of his human form. The feet of the Buddha. And it's if you understand the spiritual psychology, that the blessed one walked on the earth. He was here among you. So the Buddha pada in a way show that Buddha is not some kind of person who is ahistorical, isn't it? He was here, born among us. He walked among us. He walked all over the places, as we know that he walked thousands of miles in the open air, sometimes sleeping at the root of the tree, eating whatever he was offered. As Baba Ambedkar said, that his was the toughest task assigned to any human being, and he carried out. He walked all over the places. So you see, these are some of the Buddha padas that I'm trying to show you. And you see this in the central figure. You can see the Buddha pad, you can see the wheel of the Dhamma, or even the lotus, and you can see the Triratna. Now here, the Triratna, the empty place is replaced by the Dhamma Chakra. And the last photograph I have taken from South India, you can see that it's like continuation of the representing the Buddha Pada, and the Buddha Pada had sometimes 108 auspicious symbols carved on it, and people made the talisman out of it, and they kept it in order to protect itself. That has been a practice in some of the Buddhist traditions. But this last photograph that I wanted to bring to your notice is it is having the swastika, it is having the Dhamma Chakra, it is having the Vajra. If you can see that in the last photograph, there is a Vajra there. So it's like, the Buddhist iconography evolved, it continued to incorporate the past symbols and grow further. So Buddha Pada was considered to be one of an iconic representation of the Buddha himself. The lotus. The lotus is such a prominent symbol for the Buddha that, we can see lotus everywhere. And this is from the Ajanta caves. This painting, black and white painting, I have taken it from the Ajanta caves, and to share with you something some interesting anecdote. The Buddhas of the three times was represented by a lotus bud. Then already the lotus which is fully opened up, fully blossomed, and the lotus which is about to blossom. So the Buddhas of the three times was represented by the lotus, and you can see that here in this painting, and there are sculptures showing the Buddhas of three times through this kind of the lotus flower. I would have put more photos, but if you visit to any Buddhist sites, you can see the lotus. The Dhamma Chakra has been considered to be a very important symbol representing the Dhamma, representing the Buddha all the times. And in the last photographs, you can see that people are paying their homage to the Dhamma Chakra here. Various animals which represented different aspects of the Buddha's life, like for example the horse, which represented the Buddha's renunciation, the lion representing the Buddha's Sihanad, the lion's roar, the teachings of the Buddha, fearless. He was a fearless expounder of the truth. The elephant representing the birth of the Buddha, and of course the bull, where representing the practices of agriculture of the time, and it's associated with the first time when the Buddha had the experience of the dhyana. So you see, all these animals can be semiotically understood by different meanings. They are associated with different energies as well. So, they are also associated with the different directions, according to the Buddhist symbolism. So we can go on understanding them, but they explain, or they point out something that is the essence of Buddhism. I have deliberately put these four deers having the four bodies but one head. Because the deer is a very important animal in Buddhism. The Buddha gave his first talk in the deer park, and deer is considered to be the animal which is very attentive. It's always attentive, always trying to be alert of the happenings around it or the sounds around it. So the deer is very important animal in terms of symbolically representing our intention to listen to the Dhamma so attentively, just like the deer would listen to the sounds around him. This is a very interesting figure, the first figure, where this is called the Mahamayuri, and this is found in Ellora. And you see this monk down here is reading a book. So there is a table-like thing, and the monk is reading a book. And from there, the peacock is emerging, and the Mahamayuri is emerging. Now, sometimes people ask, what is the source of Buddhist iconography? Of course, the texts are the sources of the Buddhist iconography. And according to one scholar, this culture represents how the Buddhist iconography came into existence. And we can go on discussing about Buddhist iconography in the coming lectures. But I thought I would make that point here. Now, when the Buddhism came in contact with what is called the Hellenistic Greece, that time there were Greek colonies in what is now known as Pakistan, or Gandhara at the time, and the Buddha images started coming up. And here in this slide, I'm trying to show you that how the different Buddha heads and headdress of the Buddhas have emerged, and this will give you an idea as to how the head of the Buddha emerged in terms of the various sort of the symbols. These are the different heads of the Buddha that you can see. The Buddha with mustache here, and the Buddha's hairdress is also changing, and there are many variations of that. You see, I put this slide here, photograph here, because I found this very interesting sculpture near Nagpur, and it's a standing Buddha made up of bronze, and it was forged in about they say 900 AD, or some people say 1200 AD. But that's something very interesting figure here. You can see the Buddha with open eyes, and he's standing in the Abhay Mudra, and this is from Gandhara. And this painting is is called Dark Vitthal. So in the place of Dark Vitthal, whenever he's represented, he's represented as the Buddha. So in Marathi we say Savla Vithala, Savla Vittu. So in place of that, there is the Buddha. And in several it said that in the several places, whenever the Vitthal is mentioned, it's replaced by the Buddha. So what I'm trying to get it to you is that the symbols have an interesting sort of take. They can unravel many of the historical things that are being now evading us, and through study of the symbols we can unearth the lot of history. Now, these books have been a very important aspect of the Buddhist symbols, because the Dhamma was also represented with the piles of books. And here, this is from Kyrgyzstan, the first where the three monks are studying the books. And these are, of course, the Buddhist books. One is from the Theravada tradition, another is from the Mahayana tradition. But at the top of that, there is a sutra inscribed on the brick, which was found in Bihar in 500 AD. So not only in Bihar, the sutras were found written on the bricks, on the tablets, but also in South India, in Gunjupalli, they found the complete, the fragments of the sutra written on the bricks or on the tablets or the clay tablets, as it were. And, we have now found the evidences of that, that they are there. So, the books were one of the representative of the Buddhas. In fact, the Buddhism was called the religion of the books. There are so many books, so many pothis, so many pustaks, were written. And the books, as if as it were, came to become the equivalent of Buddhism itself. Now, the Bodhisattvas, there are like more than 1,000 representation of the Bodhisattvas, and there are books like Sadhana Mala and Nishpanna Yogavali, which gives the description of many Bodhisattvas, and we can read that. And the Bodhisattvas have not doesn't have that kind of they are not gods, of course. So they are like the manifestations of our own mind, the development of our mind. So what I thought, I'm not going to go into much into that, but this symbol I thought is very important to talk about. So I'm just going to talk about the most famous Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, and the depiction of that. So you see, the earlier depiction of the Bodhisattva of compassion is in terms of the Padmapani, and this is the most famous painting that we can still see adorning the walls of Ajanta, Padmapani's painting. Look at the eyes. It's reflecting the compassion. You see the entire demeanor. You see the painting has that kind of an enlightened quality. And when the history evolved, we can see that this is also the Avalokiteshvara. Same in Ajanta and Aurangabad caves. It's depicted and showing that how it can ward off the 8 sort of the fears. So it is showing that. And this is from the Kaneri caves in Bombay, where the 11-headed sort of the Bodhisattva is for the first time, represented in terms in this form in the Kaneri caves, which we can even go and see today. Then it developed into the elaborate iconography, and then this is from the Nepal. I took this photograph from the Nepal, where there is this the representation of Avalokiteshvara. So you see, there are many bodhisattvas which are represented accordingly. And as I told you, the two sources by which we can study the various bodhisattvas and their iconography are the Sadhana Mala and Nishpanda Yogavali, where a lot of these descriptions of this very iconography and symbols are collected, and their visualizations are given, and we can study that. Another symbols in Buddhism is the mudras of the Buddha, and there are many mudras of the Buddha. So we know the Dhammachakra Pravartana Mudra, we know Abhay Mudra, we know the Bhumi Sparsha Mudra, we know many mudras. There are many mudras. But I particularly put this second photograph here. This is the Tarjani Mudra. And I'm sure some of you know that where does it features. It is adorning the every page of the Buddha and his Dhamma. It's called the Tarjani Mudra, and the Tarjani Mudra is the Mudra of caution. And I don't know why Baba Ambedkar put this mudra on every page of the Buddha and his Dhamma. Maybe he's trying to caution us. Maybe he's trying to caution readers that be cautious, be alert, don't sleep, don't become lazy, So I think that's very important symbol that Baba Ambedkar has put up in the Buddha and his Dhamma. He could have also taken the Dhammachakra Pravartana Mudra, but he preferred this Tarjani Mudra. The one finger is raised here, and it's not so famous mudra of the Buddha, but Tarjani Mudra, is I think is a very interesting symbol that we can look into. Now, besides representing the Buddha, the life of the Buddha was represented iconographically and symbolically. And in Borobudur, there are like many panels representing the life of the Buddha drawn from the Lalita Vistar, which is the biography of the Buddha. So one episode is taken and represented narratively in one of the panels. And there are you see the like the comic strip that you see. But it's more elaborate, it's a graphical depiction of the life of the Buddha from his birth, from the prophecy of his birth to his Mahaparinibbana. All the prominent episodes are still there, which we can, if we go to Borobudur, we can see the life of the Buddha carved in the stone. Among many things, I have tried to bring out to you this very beautiful sculpture here that you can see, Nalagiri. And this mad elephant is trying to attack the Buddha. And in the same panel, it's shown that the same mad elephant is now bending before the Buddha, isn't it? The narration of the Buddhist scriptures, it's beyond time of beyond of that time, because you see, if you study the various panels of Ajanta, particularly the Jataka tales which are depicted in Ajanta caves, you can see sometimes the narration is serial. Sometimes you see that in one single panel, all the major episodes of the Jataka tales are depicted, and sometimes only one single sculpture will show that the essence of the Jataka tales. The second is a very famous Jataka called the Shivi Jataka, where the Buddha as a Bodhisattva has even tried to give up his life to save the life of a pigeon. See, the life of the Buddha is depicted here in the two sculpture. This is Kantaka, who is crying, and this is Channa, who is sitting at the side of the Buddha. Then the second, I told you, the Buddha has given up his turban, So you see, there's a big sort of a thing on which the turban of the Buddha is kept, and Buddha, the people are worshipping. The third picture is about the miracles of Shravasti, the great miracles of Shravasti, which we have referred briefly in the first lecture, is depicted here in the third sort of a sculpture. Now you see, this sometimes the narrators were very smart, and this is called the Tittir Jatak. There is a bird called Tittir, and this Tittir Jatak story represents how the seniority of among the friends is determined. And this is a very famous story that the elephant says that I am the senior, and the monkey says I am the senior, and the hare says I am the senior, and the bird says I am the senior. So they are fighting, and there is no harmony between them. So the elephant says, people ask, okay, tell me about this tree. When do you think that the tree has come into being? So the elephant says that when it was just bush, I have seen it. Then monkey says that when it was flowering, I have seen it. Then the hare says, rabbit says that when it was have this much height, I have seen it. But the bird says that I ate some fruit somewhere, and when I my dropping has caused this tree to come into existence, and therefore this is how the seniority is determined. So this is a titir jatak, and there are like 500 jataks, and some of the jataks like Chadanta jatak or Shibi jatak and Vesantara jatak, which is now even dramatized in the Buddhist countries and represented all over the Buddhist sites, Vesantara jatak. And this is now has become a very beautiful symbol in the Tibetan Buddhism, showing how the harmonious societies can be created. Now, this is the representation of the Paticca Samutpad. Conceptually, we have a formula: avidya pachya, sankhara, sankhara pachya, vijnana, vijnana pachya, namarupam pachya, sadayata. I'm not going to go into the details of the formula, but conceptually, that is expressed through the various terms like avidya, sankhara, and in between the word pachya, the conditionality, isn't it? So you see, the Paticca Samutpad is shown here in the Ajanta caves. You see all this conditioning is shown here. And I'm not going to go into much into that, but you see how rich is the Buddhist symbolism of the ancient times. Now, just to come back to end my talk today in terms of Buddhist symbolism, I'm just going to take a few minutes. You see, this is a modern sort of a symbolism, Milian College, which was founded by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Here you can see that, there is the deer park, the first Dhammachakra, that the place where the first Dhammachakra took place, and 2 deers, and the wheel is rotating, and beneath that you can see Pradnya and Karuna is written, and beneath that, very important, very favorite quote of Babasaheb Ambedkar: Bahujan Hitai, Bahujan Sukhai, isn't it? Charata Bhikkhave Charikam, Bahujan Hitai, Bahujan Sukhai. So you can see here in this symbol, isn't it, the whole history of the Buddhist symbolism is being connected here in the symbol. Now, this, when I went to Aurangabad a few months back, among the books of Babasaheb Ambedkar, there was a very interesting book on Ajanta. And we know that Babasaheb Ambedkar visited Ajanta in 1930s, and then later on he also visited, I think 3 times he visited Ajanta, and he had this very beautiful book there, showing all the carvings and all the paintings of Ajanta caves, and I have seen it when I was there. And this last symbol is a very famous symbol. It's said that Babasaheb Ambedkar drew this Buddha with open eyes, and very simple human Buddha that Babasaheb Ambedkar always envisioned. And he said that I visualize this kind of a Buddha. You see, so how the semiosis, how the symbols have traveled to us. And to end up my today's talk with giving some kind of a food for thought, the modern India has not forgotten the Buddhist symbolism, isn't it? It's there at the heart of our nation. So the first picture is showing the Singhasan of the Indian president. In his darbar, if you see the Singhasan of the president, there is a Buddha standing there. And if you see carefully at the throne in which the president of India sits, there is the Dhammachakra. So the symbolical representation of this is that the president is there to rotate, to set in motion the wheel of the Dhamma, isn't it? So it's the symbol has got a very deep and profound meaning for India today. And on our Indian national flag, the blue wheel of the Dhamma, is the symbol of the Buddhism itself, isn't it? So you see how the symbol has traveled from the antiquity to the present day. And our royal emblem is, of course, the Ashoka's, pillar, having the 4 lions roaring towards 4 directions, but they are smiling lions. They are not aggressive lions. And that's the beauty of the sculpture, that he brought the smile on the face of the lions. And you see the 4 animals that I was talking about, on the axle of that pillar. So there is a lot to talk about on the Buddhist symbolism. I've not touched many of them. One of the symbolism that was very prominent, and I'm still exploring, is called the pot, the kumbha, and the kumbha, the puro kumbha, or the filled up pot, is the representation of the enlightenment itself. That it shows that somebody is full of Dhamma. Many a times we are full of ourselves, we are full of ego, we are full of ourselves. But the puro kumbha is represents the person who is filled with the Dhamma to the brim. And if you strike that pot, it makes a very solid sort of a noise. It doesn't make a hollow sound. So that is one of the representations of the Buddha. And you can find that purna kumbha everywhere. It's also called ghata in the modern languages. And I'm now exploring it, how it can be related with the concept of the enlightenment in terms of the ghata and the Kabir's iconography. But that's for the future to explore. But I think this lecture will give you an idea of how rich is the Buddhist symbolism. And in this today's talk, I just tried to touch briefly upon some of the symbols that are so prominent to unlock the mysteries of the ancient Indian history. So I will stop here and I will open up for any comments or any discussions.
Thank you, Venerable Mangesh. And this is very wonderful presentation, because there is no as such any question in chat box. So, and also we are very close to time for like almost it's 6:54. But yeah, I just this is my few reflections. Maybe if someone has one comment or maybe one reflection, can someone say? But I don't think that we have time for the question answer. So I think this is again very, very interesting presentation. The way you have connecting to the previous one, the Buddhist knowledge framework. And I'm really very glad to see that how even this, the last talk, we see this semiotics, that how this Buddhist knowledge was like a preserve and, prevents in a Buddhist semiotics, and again in a Buddhist symbols. And I think this is also very, very, very deep actually when one sees these kind of the symbols. I mean, each and every symbol, there may be many more symbols as you have mentioned, and the symbols you have presented, they are very, very, close. So it's really a wonderful presentation. One has to really read and think a lot, and specifically this religion of books. I think this itself is the symbol of knowledge. Just maybe, Mangesh, you can answer this one. Someone has asked, can you talk about the Buddhist flag? Yeah.
How it evolved and represented so far. See, there are the Buddhist flag, as we see here, what we call the Panchashil flag, is actually the recent creation. It was created in the modern times in Sri Lanka. And one of the interpretations, it's definitely not the Panchashil flag, though we call it Panchashil flag. It's of course 5-colored flag. And this 5-colored flag, has to do with, I said, mythologically, that when the Buddha was enlightened, he radiated the 5 colors, isn't it? So, these 5 colors represent the Rashmi of the Buddha Rashmi. And so, it is not existing from the antiquity. It is a modern construct. And it helped, of course, the Buddhists to come under one flag, because you go anywhere now, you can see this flag, whether whatever tradition you belong, it's hoisted all over the places. So it's a modern phenomena when the Buddhists were trying to come together and globalize their sort of the networks. So that flag has a very recent history.
One more question. This net history. So what is the difference? Like you will say that this natural.
Your voice is not very clear, Dinesh. You can you write it down very quickly? Sometimes it's very clear, and sometimes it's, it's. What are the natural caves? And okay. You see, the Buddha asked his followers to take the shelter of the Leni. So the word Leni actually has, is a Buddhist word, and the Guha. And the Guha is, Guhas that we see, when it's a Buddhist word, in terms of the people who are practicing secretly, it said, you Guhya Samaj. There is one tradition in Buddhism called the Guhya Samaj, the people who are practicing, in the remote places. And the prehistorical caves that I mentioned were already there, where people used to live in the prehistoric times. Like the example is of the Bhimbetka, and the example of Panaguriya that I have given you, Sarumaru, where Ashoka went when he was young, and when Ashoka went latter times. And it said that that place is associated with either Sariputra Moglayan, because Sarumaru, or Sangamitra, or Mahendra. And we just have, we don't know much about a lot of things today. Maybe when our historical research goes into that, we can know for sure, whether Sariputra Moglayan came that far to spread Buddhism. But they, of course, definitely came to Sanchi, because Sanchi, they found the two cascades where the relics of Sariputra and Moglayan were held, and very beautifully, Sa was written in a big letter and Ma was written in a big letter there. So that's there. And there are many natural caves, and there were the caves which were created by the Buddhists themselves. Like if you go to Ajanta, or if you go to Guntupalli in South India, you can see the Buddhist caves there. The whole mountain is carved. Not only in India, but even in Sri Lanka, it was done. It was done in China. It was done in Afghanistan, the famous Bamiyan Buddhas. There are many caves, isn't it? So there are natural caves, and there are man-made caves. So the Buddhists created the man-made caves. They dig the whole mountains. And thank you, sir, for this enlightening lecture. Could you please throw some more info about swastika and how it emerged? Last slide I show you, how the symbol of swastika might have come into existence. And of course, there are many meanings of swastika, but it has nothing to do with the Hitler swastika. The Hitler swastika is tilted, while the Buddhist swastika is different. And if you see the swastika of the Bon religion, it's reverse than the Buddhist swastika, isn't it? And if you look at the Hitlerian swastika, it's not exactly the Buddhist swastika. It's like done very differently. So you see, as we were talking in the first talk, the symbols can be interpreted in several ways. And I was just thinking of how the system of science can give a definite meaning to a particular symbol. Like, for example, when we see the Buddha Pad, adorned with the Three Ratna, and at the same time Vajra, or the lotus, we begin to see that there is a system of signs, and one sign, if we can unlock the meaning of one sign, it has a bearing on the meaning of the another sign. And you see, so we create this constellation of the signs, a system of signs by which we can. So the swastika cannot be just taken away from the system of science and interpreted on its own. Well, that can be done, but it has to be interpreted in terms of the number 4, for example, isn't it? So the 4 is such a profound, 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma, the 4 Satipatthana, the 4 Padhan, efforts, the 4 Idhibad, the what is called the I don't remember the English now, but the 4 ways by which anything can be achieved, and so on and so forth. So you see, there are a lot of meanings that one can dig out of certain ways, certain things. And I have not gone much into that. You can go into the landscape, you can go into how the water was represented, you can go into how the air was represented, you can go into how the fire was represented. All these 5 elements were represented very symbolically in Buddhism, and you can see that prominently in the Tibetan scheme of things. It's called the landscape symbolism. Okay.
I will request, because it's already 7:02. We have to go
another meeting. So thank you, Mangesh sir. It was really a very wonderful talk. We definitely, there may be some question we can come next time. Somebody saying Ratna symbol looks similar to the symbol of God's tribe and within. Yeah, I think so. Maybe you want to quickly in 1 minute you want to say?
Well, we have no idea, what is this ethnography is going to reveal, because the construction of stupa is still practiced in some of the tribe communities, because the making of the stupa is a ritual, and it's a ritualistic process to encode the whole system of enlightenment. And I am hearing now that there are some tribes which have these definite rituals which are match with how these stupa is constructed with different elements and how the different flowers are arranged. And we can find that in the Buddhist scriptures, the very description of how the stupas are ritually constructed in order to walk through the path of enlightenment. So I think there is a lot, as I said, to know.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you, Venerable Mangesh, for this wonderful talk and making us enlightened about this various symbols, icons, doctrines, and all that under the Buddhist symbols.